Welcome back to our show. We are live at the Westin Hotel in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, just a block or two away from Bank of America Field, and that's good because the three of us are going to be working at that game tomorrow night. John Murphy, Steve Tasker. Steve's partner is with us again, Andrew Catalon, the play-by-play voice for Bills preseason football from CBS Sports. Great to have you here, Andrew.
Murph,
welcome
good to be
Charlotte.
back. Thank you.
Great to have you in Charlotte. How did it go last week? You and Steve are old veterans, and just another preseason opener for you two last week, right?
We've done this a while now.
How many
we,
years?
Steve?
4 or 5 years?
We had 3 together at CBS, and
right.
This was our 5th together with the Bills. So some of those overlap, but it was great to be back. We hung out a bunch, stayed at your house.
Yeah. Andrew stays at the house when he comes in town. And
people don't know that, but
Chicken wings were on the menu, I recall.
yeah,
did have that.
Went to the Bill.
The Bill.
Yeah. Andrew shows up like midweek for this game. I mean, like late in the week for this. We've been here all week. I didn't know if you knew that.
I was aware of that.
Is it hot in Jersey,
yeah,
by the way?
Not as
it's
hot
in
as
South
the
Carolina.
first thing you told me is how many showers you took each day.
It was hot.
Yeah.
It's good to see you here, though. Arrived. No problems with the flights and all that.
I'm here. I'm ready to roll.
All right.
Your impressions on the Bills' performance last week, Andrew, what'd you think?
You know, I was really impressed by their defense, Murph. Obviously, Andrew Luck wasn't playing. A number of their starters were not out there for the Colts. But at the same time, the one thing that Sean McDermott said a bunch throughout training camp was the communication has been good defensively. And I noticed that. I mean, they were all on the same page. You didn't see a lot of mistakes. You saw a lot of nice things from some young players. You were talking about your poll that you have today about some of the late-round draft picks making an impact. Johnson played great at safety. Johnson played well at defensive end. I thought there was a lot of different guys that stepped up, especially in that second half, and that certainly is what stood out to me. The offense, trying to figure out the combination on the offensive line, throwing a lot with Josh Allen the first couple series. It didn't seem like they got in a great rhythm, but defense certainly stood out to me.
Yeah, I think one of the things about it, they came out with a plan, and it's about Josh Allen's development. They just wanted to see him throw the football against the defense, and he threw it every single down. You're not going to see that in the regular season, particularly when you've got Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy. But I also think with this offensive line and the things they need to find out about it, I don't know that they'll do that tomorrow night, come out and throw it every down. But certainly you can see everything is kind of set aside and put the plan for developing Josh Allen front and center and staying with it no matter what else they got going on.
I still think that they have to figure out the offensive line.
Yeah.
And Steve and I talked about this on the broadcast last Thursday night in reference to Cody Ford. Do you find the best 5 and slot him where that may be? Or do you say, hey, we're going to have this guy for the next 10 years. Let's get him in his one spot where he's going to be for the next 10 years. To me, that's a debate. To Steve on the air last week, he said it's no debate. You play him where you have your best 5. But I still think that's fascinating going into tomorrow night's game.
Could be interesting tomorrow. Ty and Secchi, as you know, did not practice on a full-time basis yesterday. No word on any injury or any kind of tweak of any injury. Maybe it's just a veteran day off. We may learn more before kickoff tomorrow about what's involved there, because for a while it was Secchi at right tackle and Cody Ford at right guard. Maybe they look at it differently tomorrow if Secchi can't go or is limited tomorrow. That's going to be interesting to follow.
We've even had a recent addition, this guy Ryan Bates, who they traded with Philadelphia for Eli Harold. In that trade, he came over, and he's a tackle. He's listed as a tackle, and day one he's on the field. He's taking snaps.
With the twos.
With the twos. They moved him right up to C. And so I think if they think they've got a guy that can play, as odd as it seems to football people, a center guy who can play tackle, that's a big curveball into your rotation as you're trying to evaluate all these guys. But Bates moving right in with the twos in a training camp where they've got so many combinations going on. You're right. I mean, we still don't know what the real opinion of the coaches are about which guys should play where and how high on the depth chart they should fall.
Andrew, it's tempting to say none of our viewers or our listeners on the radio care who the offensive line is, but that's not the case for the Bills this year, right? They do care. And I found myself, you probably did too, you did, I saw it, kind of recapping who's playing where on that offensive line. It's a major, as major a story as you get in these preseason games, right?
Yeah, and look, it was a big problem last year. I think it really slowed them down, and that kind of held them back. And that was a huge focus in the offseason, investing in Ford, investing certainly a lot of money in Mitch Morse, who hopefully gets back out there soon. To me, and again, I have no insight or I'm not the coach, I like Ford at tackle, and then you have Feliciano or Long battling for right guard when Morse comes back. But there's so many different combinations that they can play that's why I do think it's important to keep an eye on it in these preseason games. That's what they're for.
Steve and I had to remind ourselves and actually kind of prodded along by comments from Brian Dable this week about how Dable was asked about, don't you want to get this done, figure out who's playing where, and he said, there's time. There's time to do it. And Steve and I, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday on the show, saying we're just about at the halfway point of preseason. We're really not.
Preseason's over the night after the last preseason game is played. That's it. I mean, and that's when the cuts come, and they got to have it done by
They're 3 weeks into preseason and 3 weeks ago to the opener. So there's time to get this done.
And I think the positive is it's not like you're searching for guys that are going to step up. You have the guys here. It's just finding out the right combination. I think that's what's different about this search is that they're going to have 5, I think, very solid players on that line. It's not like they're trying to figure out who's going to start in terms of, does that guy have enough talent? I think the talent is there. It's just sorting it out.
Yeah, they're not trying to hide anybody on the offensive line. And, in fact, I was just thinking about this as we were talking. You look at that offensive line last year down inside with Dawkins at left tackle, the centers and the guards, the thought was they weren't strong enough and athletic enough to be good enough as a group. Now I think they've got a lot of those guys down in there. If you put Cody Ford down in that mix with Feliciano, Spencer Long, Mitch Morse, and then Quentin Spain, you got 4 guys down there that can play all of those, and they're all exactly what you're looking for: athletic, big, strong guys. I mean, they're all 320 plus. I mean, they're big dudes. So that may be, when you think about that, now the tackle becomes the place where, okay, now how are we going to get enough depth outside because we've got it down inside?
I agree.
And then that puts Cody Ford into that mix. Yeah, they've still got a ways to go. Yeah.
Andrew Catalon, our guest, he'll have the call on TV tomorrow night, the play-by-play of the Bills and the Carolina Panthers. He'll be working for Steve Tasker on that. So, yeah, you caught it. You were in here. Our focus of our show today is kind of like the back end of the Buffalo draft. Who's got a chance to make an impact this year? What about the front end of the Bills draft? We've talked about Cody Ford, but Ed Oliver, Devin Singletary, those guys I think made very positive impressions last week. No?
Singletary was really impressive to me. He stood out. And, you had Frank Gore after the game come out and say that of all the rookies he's been around, no one has been more of a natural runner than Devin Singletary. Frank Gore's been in the league how long now? Unbelievable. That's unbelievable praise from a Hall of Famer. So, we were doing the game as you were, Murph, and you saw some of the moves he made and really just some of the electricity he brought to the stadium. I think fans were excited to see him out on the field and make these moves, and I thought that was a huge plus.
You see a guy that size with that speed, and you'd look to him to run outside the tackles. I was, Steve, really impressed by his work between the tackles.
Not only that, but when he put his foot in the ground, went up inside, he was still hard to get a piece of. He still had the ability to be elusive enough to dodge big hits, maybe sidestep one arm tackle or a guy trying to get the big hit, and then lunge forward, get positive yards, even, make a 2-yard gain into a 4-yard gain. I thought there was a couple of plays where he had to duck under where a guy went right over the top of him. I don't know how he saw the guy. And Brandon Beane said the guy's got a remarkable vision, like elite vision, which is, it's high praise for guys who evaluate players. They don't do that. But the vision that he displayed in that moment was exactly what it takes to make a really good run out of just an okay run. And I think when they get to that point, that's what has set that guy apart.
Hey, Andrew, we have a regular Friday guest on our show, Greg Cosell from NFL Films and ESPN NFL Matchup, and we had him on last Friday, the day after the Bills' victory over the Colts. We're talking about Ed Oliver, and he said something interesting about the matchup Oliver had against Quentin Nelson, the Pro Bowl guard for the Indianapolis Colts. I think he said it was kind of a draw. Oliver had
he
some
held his own, he said. Yeah, Oliver held his own against a really
good player. Which is pretty good. I did notice there were a lot, and from your broadcast, it was mostly single team blocking, Quentin Nelson versus Ed Oliver, but I don't think that's a bad start for Oliver. The fact that Greg Cosell pointed it out, I went back, he was right. It was a draw. Oliver didn't get loose, and Quentin Nelson had his hands full with him.
Yeah, first of all, Nelson is a beast. So to go against him in your first game, and Ed Oliver admitted after, he was a little nervous. He felt the adrenaline his first time out there. I think that maybe that first series, even Sean McDermott commented he was a little amped up, but then he settled in. And I think that's a great way to start your career, to go against one of the best in the NFL, to get a taste of it here. That's what the preseason is for. I think it'll really help Ed Oliver as we progress forward here.
Knowing what I know about football players, when Ed Oliver is, whatever happens in his career from this point on down, he'll think back to the first time he had to line up. Yeah, this guy, I had him my first day. Because I think Quentin Nelson's going to head for great. I mean, this guy's going to be a perennial Pro Bowl and an All-Pro. And he started as a rookie. So I think when he thinks back about it, he says, wow, what a way to start against that guy. I didn't know what I was in for until that day. But it was a matchup, I think there was a direct effort by the Bills' defensive coaching staff to put Ed Oliver over on the right side of the offense, because he's usually on the 3 technique on the other side. They said, okay, plugged him in and let's see what he can do. And I think it was a little bit of an eye-opener, maybe for both of those guys.
Andrew, what are I know you'll have a meeting tonight, you and your production team, Steve and everybody, but your perspective, what kind of storylines are you looking at for preseason game number 2 here for the Bills?
Yeah, I think offensive line is still one of the top storylines. I want to see, the mixing and the matching and how they attack it this week. It's certainly Cody Ford is the guy that I'm focusing in on when I'm up there in the booth and looking to see who's coming out there first. I think Josh Allen continuing to get timing, and the comment he made after the game was the body language of the wide receivers. Timing is something I feel like you can get in practice over and over again, but the body language comment was interesting. He wants to see how they're reacting when they get a push or the defense does a certain thing. So I think that's important again. I mean, this running back room, to me, is pretty squared away. They need to throw the ball to get Allen on the same page with these receivers as they continue to develop continuity and chemistry. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, this is just me saying this, if we see a lot more passing in the first quarter from Josh Allen.
I'll take it. I'll watch that.
Me too.
The more reps he gets, the better it's going to be when it starts. And you got to think, too, offensive linemen, I mean, they've been run blocking since they were 8 years old. Although some of these guys, even though they're big now, they start out as quarterbacks. So they kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the easy part of it, when you can just get a hat on somebody and start pushing. The hard part is dropping back, pass pro, and then the hard part is the passing game for everybody else. So, yeah, Josh Allen, the more reps he gets, the better it's going to be on opening day in New York when they take on the Jets. And I think they're trying to get a head start on. So I would agree with you. I think Josh Allen might come out and be in it for 11 plays and throw the ball 11 times again.
And I said the running back room is set, but just to further that point, I think there's a little bit of pressure on TJ Yeldon here in the next couple games. He had that fumble, did not return to the game. Sonoris Perry only had 7 carries in his career. And the Bills used him last week, albeit in a preseason game, down by the goal line. Sean McDermott said after he was impressed by his power and speed. I think there's a little pressure on TJ Yeldon to show that, hey, we brought him in. He's going to have to, do something here to stick around. That's my opinion again, but I'm going to be watching to see how Yeldon performs.
Yeah, Sonoris Perry is a special teams guy. So if he can give them something added in their down and distance, which they gave him an opportunity to do, and he did.
And he's a good special team.
Right.
He's not just a guy.
Right.
He's an impact player on special teams.
He is a guy that if he's on the roster, he's active on game day. He may not have a carry.
Yep.
He may not even get in on offensive deep, but that guy's on the field and he's active for game day as a running back.
Andrew Catalon is our guest. He's got the call of the play-by-play on TV tomorrow, the Bills Television Network. You and I both have done, all three of us have done work looking at the Carolina Panthers. The Bills practiced with them all week. I said to Steve during the course of the week down here, Andrew, how I thought they were a perfect practice matchup for the Bills, kind of similar tempo, similar approach to practice. And as I think about this game tomorrow night, they're also kind of a perfect game matchup. They have a lot at stake this season. They had a 7 wins last year. The Bills had 6. They have talent. Panthers have talent, both sides of the football, too.
Yeah, and I love what Josh Allen said, too. It's good to get a look at a 3-4 defense because that's something you'll see during the regular season. You don't see it in practice, unless they're doing something different. So I thought that was a huge plus, and I love what I'm seeing around the league. Now, I love the preseason. I love doing these games, love being here with the Bills and Steve and you, Murph. But you are seeing these joint practices now become the norm, and you guys witnessed them firsthand, and the Patriots and Titans are together, and just the healthy respect that the teams have. A lot of times I remember in the past you'd have a scrimmage with a team and there'd be just a fight on every play and it was pointless. Yeah. Now you're to the point, I think, for the most part, where these teams know you're not going to fight, you're putting in your work, and you're getting a lot out of it, and you have these two organizations with such deep ties in the Panthers and the Bills, and I think it was a great week for both teams.
Yeah, I think they got a lot out of it, and I've made the point that We've talked about it a ton. These are going to become more commonplace if they can make it work, and particularly in place of maybe some preseason games. And I think we had Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on. He says in a lot of ways you get more out of these couple of joint practices than you do out of a game because you can control it, you can put them in situations you like, and you can see them in a more individual basis for a longer extended period of time. And I think that's invaluable for these coaching staffs that are trying to evaluate these guys.
Anders, you've got this game and the Bills preseason finale, and then you get to your real job with CBS TV and working with James Lofton. Steve tells me you're just back from CBS seminars, right, in New York City. CBS
yeah, we
Sports
had our annual meetings, and really the highlight of the meeting for me is that the NFL comes in, and Al Riveron, who's the senior vice president of officiating, comes and gives a whole presentation and takes questions, and there's some heated questions in that room. A room with Bill Cowher and Boomer Esiason and Tony Romo. And obviously the hot topic is pass interference. And it's not a new rule, but now, as we all know, it's reviewable this year. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I was thinking this, and Pro Football Talk wrote an article about this today, but there is still so much uncertainty as to how this is going to be handled that if I was a head coach in the NFL, if I'm Sean McDermott, I'm using all of my challenges on pass interference in the preseason because I want to figure out how this is going to be judged. I still think there's so many variables as to how they're going to judge this and are they going to overturn it. We saw one in the Colts game, which was deflected. It was kind of weird. Right. It was a weird play. But I just still think that if I'm a head coach, I'm using this preseason to figure out how am I going to attack this in the regular season? Because I can tell you from our room at CBS that they would show a play, and half the room would be like, oh, that's pass interference, half the room would not. And then Al Riveron would say, well, this is why it's not. And then half the room is like, what are you talking about?
Do we take anything from I think you have the stats right, 17 reviewable pass interference calls this past weekend, preseason week number 1. Only 2 were overturned. To me, I thought, okay, well, they're not going to use it really to change calls much. There's too early to make.
I think it's still too early. That's why I want a larger sample size if I'm a head coach. I would not challenge anything in the preseason other than pass interference.
Really?
That's what I would do because I want to see as many examples as possible as to how this is going to be officiated come week 1.
It's the coach's rule. They put this in place. They
put the rule in place.
Yeah.
But they don't decide if it's pass interference. How is Al? That's
they
what
got
I
what they want. I'm saying live with it. You guys wanted this. Now you.
But
live
I
with
want
it.
But if I only have these certain number of challenges in a game, I want to know if I have a good chance of winning this or not. They're so gray.
Yeah.
You're just trying to guess in a way what Al Riveron is going to say. And that's why I want to see more examples in the preseason.
The interesting thing about it is that there's always this thing in the last 2 minutes of each half, it goes upstairs to the review booth like it does normally for every challenge. Now, coaches cannot challenge anything in the last couple of minutes of each half. And there's a big
they just decide on whether it's reviewable. They send it to New York, right, for the actual call. Last 2 minutes of the half.
Right. The replay official
just like
in
always.
the stadium.
So we're going to review this.
Always.
It's the same as always.
Okay.
It's the same as always. And also, here's the thing. So, for instance, you're down a couple of a score or whatever, and you have the Hail Mary, which is the big thing. Now, it's known that when you throw a Hail Mary pass, which is a long pass into the end zone, and everybody's down there kind of waiting for this ball to drop, and whoever can get it, tip it, or whatever, catch it, wins. Pass interference is almost a given.
Right.
And, in fact, the officials officiate it that way. My question would be, and I don't know if anybody asked this at the seminar, was there discussion about whether, hey, let's start calling it what it is? If there's interference down there, offensive or defensive, call it.
So,
and if on review they can do the exact same thing.
Right.
Was there a question
Yes.
like that? And
so specific to the Hail Mary, we were told, and then the teams are told, that it will be judged as per the standard. It would be judged on the field. So my interpretation of that is that you're not going to, if you like bump someone, and people watching on TV saw me bump you, maybe that's pass interference in the third quarter. It's not on a Hail Mary because that wouldn't be called in a normal situation.
It has to be egregious.
Correct.
And here's the thing, and here's my problem with it. Why don't you make the guys play it clean? If it's pass interference, call it. And here's the problem, and here's what it comes down to. If they call it, they got to call it on both sides. And as a result, the play they'll happen again. It'll be an untimed down if it's at the end of the game. Now they do this again. They would do it over and over and over until Nobody saw any pass interference on either side, which puts the defense at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah. I think that would – I like what they say about this, that you're going to have to tackle – basically, my interpretation, you're going to have to tackle someone in the end zone on a Hail Mary for it to be called.
It has to be a Rams-Saints kind of play.
Yes.
Right.
Let me get you out of the Hail Marys for a second, and we're talking to you like this is your call to make it. It's not. But you were there with the officials. Out of a Hail Mary situation, offensive pass interference for years, for decades, Andrew, it's been, oh, look at him. He gently creates, and now I'm bumping you, creates separation. He's a master at creating separation. They don't call that. Are they ready to start calling it now based on a review? Offensive pass interference like that?
Again, the rule has not changed. It's just that it's reviewable now. So that's one thing they wanted us to remind everyone that, there's no different rule now. So I think to your question, Murph, no. If it's not been officiated that way in the past, it's not going to change now, and it's not going to be worthy enough to overturn. And that's the debate for the coaches, because if you see that little bump, are you going to throw? Remember, you don't get extra challenges this year,
right?
So you still have the same number of challenges. Is it worth it for you on that little bump to question it and use one of your challenges, potentially lose a timeout, or are you going to be like, well, you know what, that wasn't called in the past, I'm not going to change it now?
Because the wording, and I have the rule here in my other over there.
Significantly hinder.
Yeah, and for offense, a push-off is significantly hindering. Not been called a lot, but some guys are masters at getting that push-off. I'm talking about offensive players. Why not adhere to what it says on paper?
Well, they can now because they can review it and say, listen, that was offensive pass interference, and they've got to call it the way it would have been called. And if they didn't,
but Andrew's saying they won't.
Well, then you got to live with it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's the whole thing. The way if you know that going in, you're going to know not to challenge that kind of thing. Plus, you're going to coach your guys to take advantage of it.
Well, go ahead, Andrew.
But this is my point, getting back to the preseason. It's not like you challenge a play was the runner inbounds or out of bounds. There is a fine gray area here that we need more examples so that come week one, we're not having these hypotheticals. We have some type of basis from the preseason.
You expect that to happen?
I would. I do. Yeah.
You've got to make the gray area go from being as broad as it is to a narrow band that everybody can live with. And that's, I don't know that we'll get there very fast, but sooner or later they will. I'm with Murph, though. This 1 year, finger quotes, experiment, it's not going away. I mean, they'll probably try it, and they'll hone it in, and it'll probably take them as long as it did to get the catch rule right.
Yep.
And then we're going to have to live with it for the interim.
Because of the NFC Championship game. And they basically admitted as much, that certainly there was some discussion about this in the past. Should things like this be reviewable? But that was the one that catapulted it into our lives.
It's a slippery slope. Something else is coming.
It is.
Some other judgment call.
My kid playing in the CFL, everything's reviewable up there on every play. And it is a weapon for a coach who just gave up a big play and can say, no, this guy held on the other side away from the play. They can challenge it, and that big play will come back.
That's going to be
one
really
way or the other.
You're going to have
sooner
a big
or later
50-yard play, and the coach can throw a flag and say, on the other side of the field, this guy got held.
They have to be specific. It was on this guy against this defender, and that's what happened. And if it's true, the play comes back. And
that's going to be a big change.
And I'll tell you what, you can say goodbye to a 3-hour football game.
Yeah.
Andrew Catalon is with us. He's got the call on TV tomorrow. Anything else from the CBS meetings with the officiating group that stood out to you?
Kickoff rules now are full-time effect.
Full-time.
You know all that. And the other thing that you have to be careful about is, you can't – some of these massive celebrations that we've seen now, you have to be one of the active players in uniform to be able to run on the field. So if you're inactive or you're injured, they're going to look. And if you run on the field, you can get in trouble. So how about the Bills last week with Wade? That probably would have been a penalty.
The entire city of Buffalo was on the field.
Exactly. I think that would have been a penalty in the regular season.
The equipment staff was out there.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
Great. Yeah.
So that's something to keep
I told Steve on Friday, and you've been around a long time too, Andrew, that to me is one of the great preseason moments because of the celebration and the play that I can recall. It really was amazing.
It's a great story, and it's a great culmination to it.
Yeah,
at least
remember,
at this point.
Sean McDermott told us the day before in our production meeting, I really hope that we get a chance to get him in. It'd be so neat to see him play. Well, got him in. It worked.
One play.
Yeah.
Andrew, thanks for this. Have a great broadcast.
You too, Murph. Good seeing you as always.
There. Good to see you.
All right.
Andrew Catalon. You'll see him on TV tomorrow in Rochester and in Buffalo and all throughout upstate New York, the Bills and the Carolina Panthers. Steve and I coming back with more One Bills Live from Charlotte, North Carolina. This is Buffalo Bills Radio.